Today's Locked On Texans podcast. The draft is over through 7 rounds. Who was the most impactful draft pick? What was the most exciting draft pick? We'll take a look at all of that and more on today's episode.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Make them say, on this Monday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If this is your first time watching or listening, thank you for stopping by. Please subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. If this is your 15th, 30, 35, 38 time coming back to the Locked On Texans podcast, thank you. We really appreciate you for being supporters of this show. I'm your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. On the other side of the screen, one of the hardest working men in Houston's media, Texans Credential Media Member, Sports Illustrated's own Kade Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. We got an exciting show for you guys today. We look at our final thoughts on the 2024 NFL draft for the Houston Texans, the most impactful draft pick. We'll talk about that in the second segment. And we look at the most exciting day 3 picks. So we got a lot to talk about. But Kade, before we dive into that, listeners and viewers, I FaceTime Kade, and it looked like he was waking up at the NRG Stadium. I don't think he got a lot of time away from 16 and Kirby. Just really quick, briefly, can you explain the experience over the last couple of days for you covering this team that didn't need a quarterback this year, but just the atmosphere as a reporter around this draft, maybe compared to the others?
Man, all I can say is this draft is the definition as to why the Houston Texans are no longer in football purgatory. And I saw some people on Twitter talking about how, this draft was boring. It wasn't that exciting. And even on the reporter side of things, it wasn't that exciting. But John, listeners and viewers, that is the price of having a really good football team. Plain and simple. They are not in the same category as the Chicago Bears and the Arizona Cardinals and even the New England Patriots, who seem like, when you think of teams that had really good and exciting draft, I think those are the 3 teams that come to mind. But for the Houston Texans, instead of trying to find that foundational piece at every single position, they just added to a foundation that's already really good.
I think that's a great way to look at it, right? And I think for Houston and how they have it set up right now, overall, that's what you want to sustain longevity. Mm-hmm. Though they haven't won that championship yet, and we believe that'll happen.
So it's coming.
A window for it, right? It is coming. It is coming. But we believe it's coming. And that championship window, I think, when you draft like how Houston did, you give yourself an opportunity to, add to those building blocks, maybe fill in some of those cracks in the foundation so you can continue to stay strong. Day 3, let's just look at the draft overall before we look at the most exciting day 3 picks. Of course, in the first round, or the second round, with their first pick at 42, Kamari Lassiter, our cornerback out of Georgia. Blake Fisher at 59, offensive tackle out of Notre Dame. Kalen Bullock, safety, USC. Kade Stover, Kade, this is your guy, tight end, Ohio State. Oregon linebacker Jamal Hill, Jawar Jordan, running back out of Louisville, Solomon Byrd, DN, USC, Marcus Harris, D tackle out of Auburn, and Ladarius Henderson, offensive lineman out of Michigan. Now, the most exciting day 3 picks, Kade, take it away. And I already know where you're going with this. I know you're about the Cat 4 guy you've been wanting here in Houston since you had an opportunity to hear how his relationship was with quarterback C.J. Stroud at the Combine.
I know a lot of people looked at the addition of Cade, and they probably even thinking to themselves when they hear me rave about Cade is you only like him due to his relationship and the chemistry that he already has with quarterback CJ Stroud. While that is true, the one thing that made me fond of Cade, John, when I went back and started reviewing his tape and I went back, started looking at his numbers, and I went back to kind of start dissecting his play, Cade exploded onto the national scene in 2022, playing alongside CJ Stroud and that phenomenal Ohio State team. But to me, I love his progression in 2023 because this young man ended up getting better than he was in the season that he played with CJ. As a matter of fact, in 2022, Kade Stover only had 3 games where he recorded 50 or more receiving yards. In 2023 alone, he recorded 7. And he also posted a career high 96 in a victory in November. I like what Cade can do. I love his potential. Over the last 2 seasons combined, 982 yards, 10 touchdowns. John, I know you might not agree with this statement, but I believe if his development and everything goes right, I believe that the Houston Texans will finally have an established tight end since the days of Owen Daniels. And that is very important. I'm not saying he's going to be better or just as good. I'm saying that this organization is finally going to have that tight end number 1. Because when I went back and I take a look at his improvement, not only did I see him improve in the passing game, he also improved in blocking as well. According to Pro Football Focus, in 2023, he did put together a run blocking grade of 55. I know that might not seem good to a lot of people. However, when you think about who he's going to be blocking alongside, when you take a look at the potential of that offensive line, the only thing that he's going to do is just help this run game get even better. And of course, we already know what he's going to be able to do to play alongside CJ Stroud. And John, this is something that you and I have been talking about ever since we have started covering this team. After the loss of Owen Daniel, it seemed like every other year, the Houston Texans are juggling to see who is going to be their next tight end. And every time you think you might have somebody in the next year or so, they're going to be gone. I love what Dalton Schultz did for this organization in 2023. I'm pretty sure if he stays healthy, he's going to have an opportunity to replicate that same production in 2024. However, Dalton Schultz is getting up there in age. And when you take a look at somebody like Kade Stover, he's definitely somebody who's going to come in, take the helm as well. He's going to be in a position to battle for tight end number 2 alongside Brevin Jordan. We'll have a conversation about what that means for him and TQ later on in the week. But he's going to have an opportunity to battle for tight end number 3, tight end number 2, and develop and work alongside Dalton Schultz. And when you go back and take a look at how productive Dalton Schultz has been throughout his career, knowing that that is just another veteran that the Houston Texans have inside their locker room to help these young guys like Stover, he's just going to get better, man. I'm excited. I love the pick of Cade. Not only is he my most exciting, he's definitely my favorite. And no, this don't have nothing to do with me, building a short connection with him at the NFL Combine, man. Shout out to Cade. I can't wait to see what he's going to do for the Houston Texans for this upcoming season.
Quick tidbit on Kade Stover: 0 drops last year at Ohio State. Also, I think he's still growing as a tight end. He started his career out as a defensive lineman, like a 3-4 D lineman or something like that. So I think he has ways to go. The competition for that tight end room will be great to see during training camp. He does have that relationship with CJ, knows some of his tendencies as a quarterback and tight end. And I also look at Cade potentially being, able to line up with Dalton Schultz on the field. So we may see some Kyle Juszczyk decisions from Bobby Slow from the sideline, maybe moving him, as an H-back, putting him in motion, maybe trying to get some misdirection going on with that. So potential is there. Not one of my favorite tight ends from this draft, but
yes,
again,
I know.
CJ gets the guy that I know he has a relationship with, working relationship with on and off the field from Ohio State. And so I love how they kind of value CJ's opinion really quick. With how they go about building this team together. Now, with you saying Kade Stover, we know that Houston signed Dalton Schultz to a 3-year extension in the offseason. What have we heard? Free agency didn't change our draft board. Free agency, what else happened? What, Cody, what news did you break during free agency?
That the Houston Texans had traded for veteran running back Joe Mixon.
And with that being said,
extended him, by the way. And extended him.
So the free agency offseason moves that you look at didn't change the draft board. I got to go with Jalen Johnson, the running back out of Louisville. Listen, let's take a look at his numbers first. He can make the most of his opportunities at Louisville, right? And understand that Isaac Guriendo was also a part of that backfield. We talked about him a lot here on the show, right? But he has, in his last 2 seasons, 6.2 yards per carry, over 1,900 yards in his last 2 seasons, back-to-back seasons with 15 or more runs of 15 yards or more. Also, you look at how he can be a fit for this team. The disparity in zone run opportunities is large. You look at 240 zone run opportunities in the backfield for him compared to 82 power opportunities for him in the backfield. Last 5 games of the 2022 year, breakaway run yards of 59, 62, 71, 58, 90. Games in 2023, breakaway run yards 74, 125, 75, 84, 42, and 42. So let's also take a look at some of the things that you remove the numbers from. Does he follow his blocks? Check. I also love what he can potentially be for Houston in terms of the screen game, passing, catching out of the backfield. As a runner, does he run through contact? Check. Go back and look at some of the Georgia Tech runs that he had that game this past year. Does he have home run hitter ability? Again, check out the Georgia Tech game, the Murray State game, the Duke game. He doesn't have elite speed, right? I think he ran a 4.54 40. However, and this is what I really like about this young man, he is elite at out-angling defenders. I mean, you got guys that beat you because listen to, and I'm gonna tell you why I'm excited about this pick. All of this is gonna make sense, and I think all of this is why guys should be excited about this young man. But you got some guys, 4.3 speed, they're gonna beat you to the point before you even get there. You got guys that will meet you at that same point and try to just run through you. But then you got Jordan. You got him as a running back that understands I may not have that elite speed to blow past you, but what I can do is understand that if I take a different angle to maybe this outside zone, or while I'm following my blocks, understanding that I have one man to beat on this design run, you're going to see him say, okay, if I bounce out a little bit more and cut upfield at this certain angle, I can beat my man. And I think that fits what Houston wants. I can't wait to tell y'all why I really like this guy, man. More on Jawar Jordan, why I really like him, why he was the most exciting pick of day 3 for me. One of his most impressive runs of the year was the simplest against Duke in the first quarter. Counter play, follows the block, uses angle to beat the man on design play, which was the safety, and he scores. He's tougher than his size. It's like 5'9", 190, 195, 5'10", 5'11", but he's a light in terms of weight, but he's much tougher than that. He's good at running to the spot of a design play without running into a defender. Hear me again. He's good at running to the spot of a design play without running into a defender, even if that defensive player is close by. I saw a lot of success on counter plays. He's also good. He uses his feet well. So I wrapped all of that up to say I'm excited about this because we talked about, well, who could be the running back 2? When will Houston address the running back position? Will Dameon Pierce get another shot to prove he's valuable to this team? And throughout that multiple conversations, guys, we've said his value, Dameon Pierce's value to special teams. But as a runner in Bobby Slowick's system, with the amount of zone run opportunities he had at Louisville under his coaches. I wrote them down. Coach Jeff Braun and Coach Scott Satterfield in 2022. Satterfield, Coach Braun in 2023. A lot of zone run opportunities. Did a very good job of making the most out of his opportunities while splitting a backfield with Isaac Guriendo. My favorite of all, he does a very good job of running to the spot, getting there without having to create that contact, which we've seen Damian Pierce do. He does an even better job of making sure how to follow his blocks, which was an issue last year, I think, at times for Damian Pierce, even at times dating back to his rookie year. And he also understands the use of angles. I don't have to beat you with a 4.2, 4.3 speed. But what I can do is get to a spot on the field that's compromising you and your hips and your angles as a defender. Now I have an opportunity to do what? Pick up runs of 74, 75, 71, 90, 42, 59, 62. We talked about this draft, the most exciting day 3 picks. Both of these exciting day 3 picks, whether it was Cody and myself, were at positions Houston had just signed extensions to. However, they needed that depth, and you look at what Houston needs for the future, different ways that they can extend this window that they're about to crack into. I love Jawar Jordan's tape. I really do. I think he has an opportunity, really, guys, and I'm not just saying this. I think by the time training camp is over, we're going to be looking at him competing for a running back 2 on this depth chart. Don't be like LeBron and start pouting when you miss out on money because it's the playoffs time right now in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is also in full swing, and so I assume you guys may want to look at the unders for the Astros, but FanDuel is the place you want to be to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? What? Your phone is in your hand right now. So just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Speaking of the NBA playoffs, I know you guys have been excited. We'll see the Rockets till next year, mark my words. But with Game Time, you're looking at an app and company that is now an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. About a month and a half ago, right before the NBA regular season wrapped up, I went on Game Time, the app, to pick out a couple of Rockets tickets for me and my wife. We got some good ones. I saw exactly where we were going to be seating and also ran into somebody there, Cody Davis, as he was covering the Houston Rockets. But the Game Time app really was a great experience for my wife and I on our date night. We had a great time. Thank you to the Game Time app. And I'll tell you this, we almost had to cancel because our babysitter had some issues. Luckily, they were able to come through. But what I liked the most was we had to cancel. I would have been able to get my money back with their lowest price guarantee. No, I'm sorry, with their event cancellation protection. True story. Went, had it all ready to go, but luckily everything went through. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this latest installment of Locked On Texans. As John and I continue to recap the 2024 draft for the Houston Texans, I would like to transition over to the most impactful prospect the Houston Texans had an opportunity to add. Where you take a look at every single one of these players, John. As much as I love Kade Stover, and I think he's going to play a big role in this offense next season, my most impactful player, I can definitely see safety from USC, Kalen Bullock. I really do like this young man because, John, first and foremost, this is a safety that the Texans were able to add. One of two safeties, by the way, that the Texans were able to add through the 2024 draft. And I like him because throughout this whole entire offseason, I kept thinking to myself, how can the Houston Texans improve their pass defense? As you guys know by now, I know I repeated it a lot here on this show, but the Houston Texans ranked in the bottom half of passes yard allowed last season. And when I take a look at the addition of Kalen, this young man was one of the best defensive backs that the Houston Texans could have added. This young man recorded 15 pass deflections and 9 interceptions during his entire season, during his entire career at USC. He has also in 2023 put together a coverage grade of 82.2, and when targeted, he only allowed 57% of those passes. John, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's actually going to challenge one of the Houston Texans, starting safety as of right now in Jalen Petrie or Jimmy Ward. But I look at him and say to myself this: if Jimmy Ward has another season where he's battling through injuries, or Jalen Petrie is having another season where he's not giving you that same potential, that same promise that we saw throughout his rookie season, I could definitely see the Houston Texans using Kalen a lot more, and he's going to have an opportunity to put his impact and have a staple on the Houston Texans defensive backfield.
And if Kalen is that single high safety that I've been wanting Houston to draft, right, then you look at what Houston can do with Jalen Petrie. So I also think that adds to his impactfulness on this defense, right? But I think my most impactful draft pick of the 2024 draft for Houston is Kamari Lassiter. I mean, he's a guy that I've been liking since January. Going back and looking at some of his tape, right? I think he got a whole hell of a lot better this past season compared to 2 years ago, cleaning up on those penalties. I also like his mentality and his approach to playing football. And I think I like that more because he's going to be playing for a head coach that wants to mirror toughness, being quick to the ball. What we call it, the swarm defense. And on top of that, you look at some of the uncertainty at the other cornerbacks, for the other cornerbacks on this team now, Okudah, Henderson, two players that are on 1-year deals. Their future isn't necessarily tied to Houston like Derek Stingley Jr. No Steven Nelson this year. We look at the inside competition as Desmond King and Miles Bryant. Overall, you look at Houston's depth chart at that cornerback position. Where does Lonnie Johnson Jr. tweet through it rank on there right now? Is he safety? Is he corner? Also, you look at how young Kamari Lassiter is. I think that adds to what he can bring to this team. I think he'll have an opportunity to really compete cornerback too. And if not cornerback too, because I can still see Houston saying, we like a lot of what Jeff Okudah can bring, then he'll be a very good rotational piece, kind of like Shaq Griffin was for Steven Nelson at times last year, or whenever we needed somebody to fill in for Derek Stingley because he was down with an injury. So I think that's the type of impact he'll have on Houston this year. And I'll say this. I don't know the numbers from last year. Maybe I can find it on Next Gen. But I can see Houston running a lot of man and just ramping up that cover 3. A lot of times cover 3 on certain plays turns into man anyways, but just allowing their corners to have an opportunity to beat the wide receivers and getting that pressure up front. They'll cause that pressure. I like Lassiter a lot, and I think he is the most impactful player from this draft. All right, guys. Game off. Got to pause here. Talk more about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. But there is just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to compete with albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the board with. Hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new, exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasures or a robot machine. And get this, there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now, free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. I kind of preluded to my thoughts, but Cody, what are your final thoughts on the 2024 draft?
Oh, I already gave one of my final thoughts already, that the Houston Texans are no longer in football purgatory. But just some other quick thoughts that I have. Second on the list, I feel that the Texans could have and should have traded up in order to draft Kool-Aid McKinstry. As you know, he went one spot before the Texans at pick number 41 to the New Orleans Saints. I know that's ironic, but I think that, I think, and this also goes into my third thought as well. This also might be the first time where Nick Caserio wasn't as aggressive as he was the last three drafts. And I get it, because you just needed so much stuff. I mean, you go back to even the 2021 draft, you traded up for Nico Collins. Look what he has become, and of course, 2022, you traded down and take Kenyon Green. Hopefully he could develop into something special. You ended up trading for Christian Harris. He has established himself as a foundational piece, and of course, everybody remember 2023, right after CJ, you shocked everybody. Trade all the way up, sent a hefty package to Arizona. Shout out to Arizona who's using that package, by the way, in a very good light, I must add. But just being aggressive and trading up to get Will Anderson Jr. and trading up to go get Tank Dell. I know he made some trades, but there was moments where, like, for example, John, after the first round, especially how many offensive players went off the board, I thought for sure that Nick Caserio was going to take that 42nd overall pick and try his hardest to trade up as high as far as he can go in the second round to get somebody like Kool-Aid McKinstry, who, as we see with the pick of Kamari, a cornerback, was definitely at the top of their draft board. But to me, he just wasn't as aggressive, which once again is a good thing, because it shows you that this team is on the right trajectory.
Yeah, and I think for Nick, if I can make sense of it, which I try to do here, maybe he didn't want to risk some of the late round value that he had of players that he knew. You look at a Mark Harris, D tackle out of Auburn. You look at the offensive lineman Henderson out of Michigan that they drafted. You look at Solomon Byrd, the DN from Marcus Harris, from Auburn. But Solomon Byrd, the DN that they picked up in the 7th round out of USC. Again, the player that I raved about, Jawad Jordan, running back, he's a 6th rounder. Jamal Hill, when they finally addressed the linebacker position, 6th rounder. Maybe he just didn't want to risk losing out on some of those players that they really liked during the draft process. And he figured, hey, you know what? We got guys at the 42 that we have rated that'll be available potentially at 42. If one player goes off the board, we got another guy that we like that'll come in to fit our system and what we're building here in our culture. So I think that what made Nick Caserio kind of stay pat. I could see why the feelings toward not trading up for Kool-Aid is there. But do you think, just briefly, that it made sense to not lose out on some of that late round value Houston had?
Yeah, most definitely, John. And that goes hand in hand as to Nick Caserio not being as aggressive, because you already have your foundational pieces at several different positions. Because since he's been the general manager, processing and executing these drafts since 2021, every single year he always had multiple 7th-round picks. Let me tell you how many 7th-round picks he picked before Saturday. One, and that was Brandon Hill. On Saturday, he kept all three of those
And I was
7th-round
shocked.
picks. And I was shocked and tired. Like to go inside the NRG Stadium, all of us was like, all right, it's the 6th round. We know Nick Caserio about to trade all them 7th. We might keep one. We about to be done. No, he kept us there and used every single one of those picks. By the way, I think one of those picks would definitely be something special for the Houston Texans for this upcoming season. We talk about that later on in the week.
Marcus Harris.
Exactly. But like I say, man, this whole entire draft, man, it was just different from a good standpoint. But once again, man, 3 7th-round picks, not being that aggressive, and John, to your point, knowing that there are several players in those later rounds that he could utilize, even if they don't have a major role for this upcoming season, these are the guys that would definitely have an opportunity to either, establish something on special teams. The Texans over the last 2-3 seasons, they have had one of the best special teams units, but they can definitely give them an opportunity to develop and learn. So when their time comes, whether that's 25, 26, 27, especially when they're going to be in a thick of this championship window, they're already going to have guys that's going to be able to just come in and produce right away.
And I love that, what you just said. How many of these guys going to actually start? No, I don't think maybe none of them outside of Kamari Lassiter and Bullock may have the 2 highest players that may have opportunity to start. But I think, again, you look at down the line, we'll look back at this draft and say it wasn't maybe eye-popping. I know a lot of people are like, why we didn't get this player? Why we didn't get that player? This draft may not be eye-popping. And I think my final thoughts on the 2024 draft altogether, it may have not been a lot of eye-popping names outside of the amount of quarterbacks that went early and for some cases too early. But we'll look back for Houston and say, man, we got him at that round and he's doing what right now for us? Jeez. Or, man, maybe he was right to trade up and go get that player at 59. So I think that's my final thoughts. This was a depth draft. And with that, you're giving a lot of these guys opportunity to grow into NFL players, get accustomed to the NFL lifestyle, the NFL speed, the coaching. You're not worried about school anymore. You're focused strictly on the NFL game, the football game. So I like this draft because what they did in 2022, Steen, Petrie, Harris, I'm still throwing in Dameon Pierce's name. What they did in 2023, CJ, Rookie of the Year, Will Anderson, Rookie of the Year, Tank Dale, we know how impactful he is. I'm missing somebody from last year. But what they did last year allowed, and this offseason with free agency and the money that they had, and Deshaun Watson, allowed them to go out there and have a draft to where they could say, we don't need guys to come in day one and save us. We've saved ourselves already. Now we need football players that can get with the program. And just like any great program, when you look at the Alabamas of the world, when you look at Dallas a long time ago, when we probably wasn't even born yet, when you look at New England, when you look at some of these programs that were able to establish themselves, Miami, USC, LSU, they always have a guy in waiting that's been working their butts off, busting their ass, and they can step into a position where now they're starting and there's no drop off. And I think that is what Houston is trying to build here. Also, really quick, the amount of time Nick Caserio has said program in the last several years points to that thought of mine and that ideology. But thank y'all for listening to this episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. I know it probably ran a little bit longer. We thank you for sticking around to this point. Please subscribe on YouTube at the Locked On Texans YouTube page and follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.